The world stands still for every mother who faces the impossible, the loss of her child. But for Grace, the unbearable tragedy was not just in her daughter's death. It was in the brutal violation of her innocence, an act that shook her to her core. This is the story of how one woman confronted the most heinous loss, the pain that no one should ever bear, and the harrowing journey of a mother trying to find her way through the depths of grief. Grace Thompson sat in her living room, the quiet hum of the television filling the room as she absent-mindedly scrolled through her phone. It had been a typical Tuesday. Her daughter, Lila, a bright 16-year-old with a contagious smile, had gone to school like any other morning. Grace had kissed her goodbye, telling her to be careful. Little did she know, those words would be the last she would ever say to her daughter. Lila had been more than just a student. She was Grace's world, the light in her life. A single mother who had worked tirelessly to give Lila a future she never had. Grace often found solace in the small moments, the shared cups of tea, the laughter over dinner, and the dreams they talked about. Her daughter had been on the verge of everything. Her life was only beginning. The time dragged on as Grace waited for Lila to return, the clock on the wall ticking louder and louder in the silence. Her phone buzzed, a message from Lila's best friend. Mia. Lila hasn't shown up yet. I'm starting to get worried. Have you heard from her? It was 6:30 p.m. when the phone rang. Grace's heart skipped a beat. She didn't recognize the number, but something in her gut told her this wasn't good. The voice on the other end was professional but full of quiet sorrow. Ma'am, this is Officer Davidson. Are you the mother of Lila Thompson? Yes. Grace's voice was trembling. I'm afraid your daughter has been involved in an incident. She's been hurt. We need you to come to the hospital immediately. Her world crumbled as the words sank in, and she barely remembered the drive. The hospital lights were too bright, the sterile smell of antiseptic too sharp. But it wasn't the surroundings that were the most suffocating. It was the fear that gripped her chest with every step. When Grace finally entered the emergency room, the sight that greeted her almost sent her to her knees. There, lying unconscious, was Lila, her body bruised and battered, her spirit seemingly broken. The terror in Grace's heart deepened as the nurse gently told her the details of what had happened. Lila had been attacked by a group of boys on her way home from school. The words rape and gang echoed in Grace's mind like a twisted symphony. She couldn't comprehend the gravity of it. How could this have happened? How could the world be so cruel? Days turned into weeks, and Lila remained in a coma. Doctors couldn't give Grace the answers she needed, only vague assurances that they were doing everything they could. Grace refused to leave her daughter's side, holding on to the hope that Lila would wake up, that the girl who had been so full of life would return to her. As Grace sat by her daughter's bedside, she replayed every conversation they'd had. Could she have protected her better? Could she have walked her home that day? The guilt gnawed at her soul, threatening to consume her. In the weeks that followed, the police investigation revealed details that were too painful to process. Lila had been attacked by a group of teenagers, boys from her school who had been in trouble before. They had targeted her on the way home, a crime fueled by their toxic sense of power. But for Grace, this wasn't just about revenge. It was about finding a way to make sense of the senseless. Lila's assault wasn't just physical. It was emotional, psychological, and it had shattered Grace's understanding of the world. She began to question everything she had once known about safety, about protection, and about how to shield her child from the darkness that existed outside their front door. When Lila woke, the light in her eyes had dimmed. The girl who had once been full of hope and dreams now had a haunted look about her. She barely spoke, her once vibrant personality dulled by the trauma she had endured. Grace could only hold her hand, hoping that the love she offered would be enough to heal the wounds that no one could see. But as the days turned to months, it became clear that Lila was changing. The girl who had once laughed at the silliest things now sat in silence, staring at the walls. The bond between mother and daughter was strained, as Grace found herself trying to navigate a new reality, one where the joy she had once known was slipping further away. The police were still investigating the boys who had attacked Lila, but Grace no longer cared about their punishment. Nothing would bring her daughter back to the way she was before the attack. She was lost in the depths of her own grief, trapped between the desire for justice and the need to protect what little was left of her daughter's spirit. Lila's suffering didn't end with the physical assault. Her mind began to unravel in ways that no one could have predicted. The trauma, the emotional scars, and the feelings of shame and fear began to consume her. Lila became withdrawn, isolated in a way that Grace couldn't understand. Then, one cold winter morning, Grace found Lila lying on the floor of her bedroom. Her daughter had taken her own life. It was a decision that left Grace shattered, a wound so deep that it felt as though the earth beneath her had cracked open. The girl she had fought to protect was gone, and no amount of love could have changed what had happened. The funeral was small, just close family and a few friends. Grace could barely bring herself to look at her daughter's body. The young girl who had once held so much promise, now a mere shell. She had failed her. The guilt was unbearable. Months passed, and Grace found herself questioning everything. She sought therapy, though it felt like nothing could fill the hollow ache in her heart. She couldn't escape the overwhelming sense of powerlessness. But as the world continued to move forward, Grace found herself determined to ensure that her daughter's story was not forgotten. Lila had been a victim, yes, but she had also been a person with dreams and hopes, a person who deserved more than what the world had given her. Grace began speaking out, using her pain as a platform to raise awareness about the horrors of sexual violence and the struggles of mothers who lose their children in such horrific ways. She spoke to schools, to parents, and to anyone who would listen, hoping that her story might help prevent another mother from experiencing the same fate. She channeled her grief into something bigger than herself, fighting for justice, for awareness, for the victims whose voices were so often silenced. Every step she took was a step away from the darkness that threatened to consume her. She may never fully heal, but she refused to let Lila's story fade into obscurity. Grace may never find peace, and her heart may never fully heal, but she carries her daughter's legacy with her every day. Lila's life, though tragically short, left an indelible mark on the world. Grace's voice became a powerful tool for change, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable pain, there is strength to be found in the fight for justice, for the voiceless, and for those who have been lost to the cruelty of the world. The echoes of Lila's story will forever resonate in Grace's heart. A mother's love, unbroken by time, by tragedy, or by the darkest of forces. Grace's voice became a powerful tool in her fight for justice, not just for her daughter, but for all victims of violence. She pushed for stronger laws, better resources for survivors, and education on how to prevent such atrocities from happening again. Through her efforts, Grace found a renewed sense of purpose. It was painful, but she knew it was the only way to ensure that Lila's life meant something beyond her tragic end. She fought for the voiceless, for those who couldn't speak for themselves. And though the pain of losing Lila never truly went away, Grace learned to live with it. She carried it with her every day, using it as fuel to keep pushing forward, to keep telling her daughter's story. In the end, it was the love she had for Lila that kept her alive, even in the face of such overwhelming grief. Grace's journey was far from over, but she had found a way to keep moving forward. Lila's memory lived on in every word Grace spoke, every action she took, every battle she fought. Lila had been taken too soon, but her spirit, her laughter, her love, and her innocence would never be forgotten. For Grace, the battle wasn't just about seeking justice for Lila. It was about ensuring that no other mother would have to face the same horror. And though the road ahead would always be painful, Grace knew that as long as she fought, her daughter's voice would continue to echo in the world, a reminder of the strength that came from love, even in the darkest of times.